Hello, we're in the studio today having a very brief look at Libris, which is the 8DO library of girls and boys choir. Libris is a fairly large library. It's around 11 to 12 gigabytes in size and consists of a very wide range of possibilities. It includes a load of choral effects you can see here. It includes a load of legato and sustain patches, including true legato and true portamento, using a number of vowels that you can switch between. It gives you a Marcato option, which has some nice strong Marcato sounds, including the ever popular phrase builder to build up your own Latin style phrases. It's got some polysustains based on chants, so the usual things like adoramus and a amen and things like that you can use, and these are either tempo synced, time stretched, or whatever. So I have a little look at them as well, including some whispers, which are great fun if you're into writing horror movies. You can get some great scary child choir whisperers there. You've also got some soloists, which are beautiful, and we'll go through them in a minute, including girls, boys, and you've got one girl, two boy, and three girls. So there are various options there. And you've also got some staccatos, again, with the phrase builder and the thing called a quick chant, where you can just dial up a Latin phrase. It'll get on with it and sing it as you hit the keys. Of course, it must be made very aware that this is not a singing choir library. This isn't designed to have your choir singing popular melodies, certainly not anything more popular than Amen. But you've got to be aware of that if you're going to jump into this one. But it does cover the range of young voices, and it's really good for that kind of filler sound in soundtracks, and for the odd soloist over the top of things, kind of oohs and ahs is really good. So very quickly have a look at some of the choral effects. I'm using Kontakt 5 in standalone mode here, so I've got a tempo control up here. I've got an 88 note master keyboard with a whole range of sliders all over it, and I've got CC1 assigned to my pedal. So I can move things around, and you'll notice I'm going to be right-clicking on a fair few things and assigning them to faders, so I'll try and remind myself to tell you, but given the 15 minutes I've got to do this on the YouTube, I'll try and do it as quick as possible. So let's go on to choral effects, breaths, chirps, percussion, songs, swoops and all that kind of thing. Let's just do a little swoop and have a quick look. So here's a swoop. You've got options for tuning, swelling, crossfading, which isn't used in this one, and you can hear a swoop. If I just head a few keys, you'll hear it swooping upwards in this case. So these are cluster swoops. It's quite nice. They've obviously got the choir in a big room and just said, look, start on this note and head up when you fancy it. And obviously the choir has done that. It's actually quite a useful thing. You can hit many notes at once. And you get that amazing ending there. Most of these I've chosen, in this case, the stage recordings. They're fairly dry, but on all of these, down the bottom, you've got a reverb option. So if I choose a reverb here, choose a cathedral because it's a bit of fun, go back to the main patch on the main window, and then play those same three random notes again, and you'll hear what it sounds like with a bit of reverb on it. So all the swoops are slightly different, and the reason they are slightly different is clearly they're not mapped by pitch, they're mapped just by the sound. And this is why over here you've got a tuning option to be able to find the swoop you like, and then you can tune it in various steps. And that's done using the Kontakt internal pitch correction algorithm, so it's fairly good. And you can then find the tune you want and the pitch you want. So we'll move on from there onto these little things called songs. They're quite fun. So load up a song. You see you've got a whole range here of various songs. They're all in their own keys, but of course you can change the tuning again. So let's just play a couple of little songs. So if you excuse the irritating American accents, and they really are, I'm afraid, a little bit annoying. I mean, I'm British, and I've got nothing against Americans, but I'd rather have these in a much more pure tone. But that's quite fun. And that's Ring a Ring of Roses, my favourite. I'm sure some of you have seen a few horror films where that's used. So let's just choose a couple of others just for fun. Okay, then it gets silly. So they've basically had a bit of fun. These were obviously extras that they thought would be hilarious, and they've done them, and they are great fun. And if you're doing, as I said, some kind of horror score, or you want to kind of mutate them in some way using other effects, you could do, and they're a bit of fun. So I'm going to ignore them for the moment. And the talking's quite fun. If you're interested in funny chattery noises, this is quite a fun one too. Again, we're looking at horror scores here, but it's a bit of fun. So let's move on and waste enough time on choral effects. Look at the legatos and the sustains. I'm just going to load the 7-vowel master up. You've got other options here, but just to give you an idea of the quality of the audio on these libraries. You've got a choice between a high and a low layer, and this is cross-faded using this X blend. I'm just going to assign that to a lever here. There we are. For some reason that's gone a bit bonkers. Oh, it's because I pressed the wrong knob. Okay. Remove that one, and then that one. There we go. And I got swell here assigned to my modulation lever. R, I'm going to choose an as my low layer, and I can choose a as a high layer, and I can key switch these. You can see here this red area key switches the low, and if I zoom up to the higher end up here, the green area, which is just off the top of my keyboard. Let's pitch up an octave. There we go. The green area is changing the tone of these. I don't know why they've decided to put one key switch right at the top of an 88-note keyboard and one key switch right down the bottom. What I tend to do is hone down the bottom here, and I can assign my low key switch to this bottom C, and then I can assign my high key switch to this second C, and I've got much better control then over the different vowels. So bear in mind you can do that. It's quite a useful thing to have. So let's just set this to and this to R. And I can crossfade between the and the R using my X blend, and then use swell. So let's just do some tootling on that. So the tone is really quite exquisite. It does sound lovely. I was dealing there, of course, with just pads. I was playing 3 notes roughly at a time, and I was playing all sorts of nonsense in chords, but the sound is beautiful. It's quite dry using the stage mics, but of course you can add reverb as we had before with that. Because all of the layers are essentially key switches, you can automate between the hms and the rs and the airs and the oohs rather than crossfading, because crossfading does sound a little bit strange. You can't get a choir to... that's quite hard for a choir to do, so maybe key switching is a better option for that. But again, for pads, it's a beautiful sound and well worth playing with. You have got this thing called Polyphony 3 here with legato, and in theory it does allow you to do polyphonic legato, but I'm not going to do that on here. I'm going to look at the true legato for that, which is much more interesting. So let's look at the true legato ooh. This is true legato ooh. I'm going to play with a few of the settings here, change the range down to 6, polyphony down to 2, speed 64, leave that where it is, leave the range, leave the shaping, and again I've got a swell on the modulation lever, so I can now play duophonic polyphony with 2 legato voices, and it does sound very nice. there I've got two voices. I was playing a little bit with the swell, but they're just going ooh, and the legato is really very good. So let's move away from that and move on to the portamento. Again, I'm going to choose an R and have a little play with the portamento just in, oops, loading another version of Kontakt, didn't want to do that. There we go. And then I can play with that as well. I'm just going to do a single polyphonic line on this one. Okay, big mistake. Thing to remember, the polyphony range here, if you put it up to 15, allows you to do an octave and a bit. If you have it on 12 and you try and expand more than 12 tones, 12 semitones, it doesn't do polyphony anymore. So let's try that again. So the portamento is really quite pretty, and again you can imagine putting reverb on that and giving it a nice whooshy sound in a soundtrack. So that works very well. Moving away from that now onto the Marcato, I'm just going to choose a Marcato phrase builder, and here you can just choose phrases. These little candles here represent hits of the keys. So I'm going to say A, Do, Mi, Re, Fa, So, Re, Mi, whatever that means. You've only got a choice of limited vowels here. Obviously it would have taken a long time to sample everything. I'm going to put a little bit more reverb on it, a bit of a cathedral, a little bit wetter than that, because of course these are Marcato, they're quite forceful sounds. And there's the phrase builder again. So you've got some options and configuration. Again, we've got swell here. But of course the phrase builder is where we're at. So we've got A, Do, Mi, Re, Fa, So, Re, Mi. Let's see what that sounds like with some various chords. So they're a little bit disjointed, but we are dealing with independent samples here. They certainly haven't done legato phrasing from all R's to all Do's, from all Do's to all Mi's, etc. So you've got this kind of Marcato sound. Of course, if you sustain them, and keep a finger on the note at all times, you don't move on to the next vowel. So you can do some quite fun noises there, and of course you hit them nice and quickly. You can kind of get a staccato, but we're going to move away from that and move on to the staccato now as well, since we're on the phrase building. Here on staccato we've got our phrase builder, and again we can choose a few more vowels this time, so A, Lo, Tus, Do, Do, A, Sol, Fa, and we can now hit these really quite hard. They're velocity sensitive, and of course they're responding to my pedal fader as well, so I'll just whip them up quite high and just hit some notes and see what it sounds like. So it runs in a cycle, but you've also down the bottom here got control using the red keys of which vowel it plays next. So for instance, I could want to go tus, 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 fa, a, lo, fa, in which case I just keep pressing the tus button, which is this G, between each note. I'll just demonstrate that. So you can control the order by hitting keys, and you could program them in if you want to spend the time doing that. But again, in the background behind some classical music, that sounds really quite fun. The last thing I'm going to go through very, very simply, very quickly, is the polysustains. I'll look at the soloist in another video. So let's just choose a sustained chance at 140. You can, oh, I've done it again. There we are. You can find a sound like Adoramus. You can fade between that and Amen. And if you play a chord, it keeps it in time with each other and plays the phrase, which is quite nice. And in this case, it's playing at 140 BPM because that's the name of the patch. You could, of course, change that to any tempo. So there's a very, very brief overview in 15 minutes. That's all YouTube will let me do. So thank you.